as the Seahawkers podcast, episode 405. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Hey, good to see you, man. Just wanted to congratulate you on this big day. It's Father's Day, so congratulations to you for doing the most basic human thing that a human being can do by procreating. Good job by you.
Good job celebrate. To you, too. I feel like we should celebrate each other. Like, we did it at least once.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, the most basic human thing in the world. Let's have a holiday for it. It's great.
It's fine. You know, we get to eat food, generally barbecue. It's a good excuse to get It's kind of like, I feel like Father's Day can be a lot like Thanksgiving, except just a different selection of food. Because, generally in the winter, Thanksgiving, you're cooking indoors rather than outdoors. And Father's Day can be the outdoor Thanksgiving. Yeah.
The only thing it's missing is football, because as we sit here and do this podcast for you guys this week, it's the doldrums, man. This is all the nonsense time, and we've got a lot of nonsense to talk about this week, I think.
I don't know if it's nonsense. I at least, listening to a lot of the pressers in minicamp and OTAs, I don't know if it's just because I'm listening for very specific things, or if it's because there were some actual nuggets that we got out of, not all of them, but enough of them to where I'm looking for things that are going to get me excited about 2023. And so that's kind of my approach to listening on some of these pressers and hearing from Pete Carroll, hearing from the coaches, hearing from some of the players. And with the new rookie class, with Geno coming back for a second year and this being the offseason of this being his team, that part of it's exciting. The part that Bobby being back and kind of how that defense is going to now hopefully change for the better, because it was a thing that really kept them from going deep into the playoffs last season. It's things like that I'm trying to find those nuggets to where I can be really optimistic about this year.
They're easy to find, especially this time of year, and especially with some of these pressers and some of the other stories that have come out. And if you're not excited about this upcoming season as a Seahawks fan, I don't know what to tell you. This is the type of team that everything is lined up for them to do some pretty great things this year. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a chip, but it's in range.
Sure.
Like, it's not ridiculous. Vegas agrees. It's pretty cool. So you start listening to some of the new additions to the team, some of the old guard, and then all the leadership that you're getting from Geno in, Pete's excitement, and just the way this team is constructed right now. It's almost perfect. It's the perfect Pete Carroll team in a lot of ways. And it's a pretty cool window to be in. So get fired up, 12s. I'm sure you already are.
I think most are. Some of it, though, does have to deal around just your particular feelings about Geno Smith as a quarterback. And I feel like so much of it is clouded from his earlier part of his career, because he didn't have that success with the Jets. And then he bounced around as a backup to the Giants. And, it never really was accepted in New York because he was backing up Eli Manning, who had won 2 Super Bowls for the Giants. So it's not like Giants fans were all that excited about the idea of, because he was there at the perfect time to transition from Eli to Geno. If, he would have hit it at the right time. I think if the acceptance piece were there, maybe if the coaching piece was there.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he didn't have McAdoo there, like he had a real coach.
But it was set up to where they could make that transition if those pieces were in place. And it's easy to think that, if things would have just been in the right place at the right time, maybe it would be different. But then, he goes on to San Diego and then comes up to Seattle to back up Russ before he moves on. So it's easy to be influenced by those earlier points of Geno's career. And I'm skeptical too. It's only been one season, but the one season that we saw, I saw a lot of nice things. And so that's what makes me more optimistic than pessimistic about everything that came before it.
Absolutely. The thing about it is, I can understand how some people would be reticent about accepting Geno in a second year and not having a plan other than Drew Lock, and being a little upset about that. I can get it. I have to really work to get there, because if you feel that way. Like, what did you watch last year? That's my question, because what Geno accomplished last year, it wasn't fluky stuff.
Right.
All of it was high level, repeatable quarterback play. And all he has now is upgrades in front of him and around him, and a full offseason being the guy coming in and leading everybody. How can you not think that he is going to be at least as good as he was, if not better? And maybe people point to second half of the year Geno, and that's fine. I think we can all admit that the offensive line wore down a little bit as the season went on, especially when you've got
chances in the second half of the season too, which I think bothered some people in terms of his turnover, or at least he didn't turn it over a whole lot more, but there were more turnover worthy plays, right?
Can't be denied. That is true. That is true. But I don't think that there's any reason to be anything but bullish on Geno, bullish on this coach, bullish on the young guys that they just brought in, big free agent signings like Draymond, bringing in guys like Julian Love. I think he's going to be a big deal. He's already looking like a big deal here in shorts and helmets and all that. This is an interesting team, and they really have 93% of what you need to make a very deep run.
Part of that foundation starts with these mandatory mini camps and the OTAs. And one of the things that we heard from Pete Carroll is that they want this as a foundation to really shape the what they want to do in this upcoming season. And part of it deals with conditioning.
We're hoping that they'll be able to find a really good rhythm and routine for their workouts so that the conditioning is not an issue. It's not like they'll be out of shape, but will they be in shape enough to handle the workload so that they can stay healthy? That's really the concern. There's the first 2 weeks of camp are really a demanding time for them, and if they haven't worked, then they can get vulnerable. After the first week, they get a few practices under their belt, and then all of a sudden they start feeling a little soreness here and there, and they get susceptible. And so that's what we're worried about. The attitude of this group and the foundation that they have. It's hard for me to imagine that they won't be ready, but we're still concerned until we can see them, and we have to do a really good job of managing the workload. There is such a deeper study and understanding of the the rigors of camp now. I mean, we used to just kill guys for double days or more, and everybody just be beat to a pulp, and then everybody kind of come back at the same time season start. We're not doing that anymore. We're way ahead of that, and the league has really been proactive in helping us gather information so that we can be really astute about what we're doing and the decisions that we're making. And even with all of that, you still run into some bumps, but it's the preparation for that I'm most concerned about, and then us also identifying the guys that we should be concerned about and not letting them go too far too fast. It's really the buildup of the workload that we're concerned about, and can they handle it?
So that gives you a bit of an idea of why are they even doing mandatory mini camps? Why do they even have it? It is to start some of that preparation, some of that conditioning, get these guys used to, especially the new guys, but get guys back in shape after the long off season. I thought it was kind of funny. It hasn't been all that long since they really did just destroy these guys in terms of the workouts that they would do in these off-season workouts, and it's what led to some of the changes in the players, having to be there mandatorily versus, because what would they used to show up in like April, everybody had to be there, and they would just work them out, like Pete said, 2 times a day, and just crush these guys. And now that's obviously evolved.
Yeah, the sports science has come a long ways, and some of those health metrics and things like that. It's a lot like, I mean, I'm not in phenomenal shape, but I'm in good enough shape that if you ask me right now today to hike 10 miles up a mountain trail, like I could get it done. Mm-hmm. But then the next 3 days, I'm not doing jack. Right. I'm laid up. And that's kind of what he's getting at. It's not that they come in out of shape. It's that you have to be in the type of condition to, put that max effort out repeatably and without injury. The Seahawks are really good about caring about their players and things like that. You heard Jackson Smith and Jigba talk about how much he appreciates the fact that coming off that soft tissue hamstring thing, that the Seahawks are slowly working him in, and what that means, and how now he feels like he's 100% ready to go. And, Witherspoon, same thing. And a whole host of guys on all different fronts, whether you're Will Dissly coming back from his injury or even guys who are coming back and they're not necessarily injured from last year. And it just takes a minute to get back into, quote, football shape. And there it is a difference. So you can only do so much, and it's probably for the betterment of the team in the long run. The one thing I do find interesting, though, it's like, okay, so you're doing this work to get back to this kind of shape, and now you're taking 6 weeks.
Right. Well, and you heard Pete kind of hint at that a little bit, that you hope that guys will take it and continue over these next 6 weeks with the idea of working out on your own so you can come into camp ready and in shape. Some guys do a great job at that. There's a few that don't. And I think it's putting it out there that, hey, if you're one of the guys who don't, there might be one of these other guys who's coming up behind you that's willing to put in the work over these next 6 weeks that then is going to end up taking your job and reps when training camp rolls around.
And this is the importance of having Bobby Wagner back in his leadership and, example that he sets for all of the players of what is acceptable and what is not. And, Bobby's going to be ready each and every day. And if that guy's ready to go with all of his accomplishments and the money he's made, and at this stage of his career with his body getting a little older, if I'm a 25-year-old second-year player, what's my excuse? I don't have one. But it also shows the importance of Gino now having the reins for the second year as the guy. You've heard all about all the things that Gino has done this offseason to be in even better shape this year, the way he's looked in these early mini camps and OTAs and all that stuff, zipping the ball around, not getting arm fatigue, like looking like the guy. It's that sort of example and leadership that you need from your top players for it to trickle down. So then during this 6 week span, everybody's like, I could go to the beach today, or I know Gino's working right now. I know Bobby's, lifting right now. I guess I better.
I know Tyler's putting in the work. I know Quandre is working. So yeah, I have to. And those are the guys that have been here the longest and have that, they really command that respect of the rest of the team. The one thing about Bobby too, and kind of kicking things off with the defense, he's one of the interesting pieces going into this offseason too, because we saw him go somewhere else. We saw him have relative success with the Rams, and to where, there were questions about whether or not he might be dropping off. And so the question that really sparked my intrigue was how the Rams used him differently schematically last season.
The biggest thing was I played a lot out on two, a lot more. I was more to like the boundary a little bit more versus my time here. I was more to the passing strength. So being exposed to that a little bit, I definitely felt like added to my game. And I would say that's pretty much the biggest thing. There's a difference the way we play the run game, but the run game is always just, find a guy with the ball. So it's never been tough.
So Bobby maybe threw a little bit of jargon in there, but what I heard him say is when they were out playing cover two, and I don't know if he was saying out on two or if it was a terminology thing for cover two, but his responsibility was the boundary side of the field, which is the smaller amount of space to cover on the field versus covering the passing strength, which is the more open side of the field. So I wonder if that carries over to Seattle, right? Because one of the criticisms, and we heard Clinton, hammer on this, right, is that Bobby in the passing game was getting beat his last year in Seattle. And so they made that one small adjustment maybe to Bobby's game, which, it might just be enough to where some of the other pieces around the team schematically, they can make that work. And Bobby, we see another great season from Bobby Wagner.
I'm not surprised that it was a schematic thing that needed to change for Bobby to be a little more successful in that area of his game. I felt like that last season in Seattle, and what Clinton was pointing to, was very much a schematic problem. Like, why are we asking a 250-pound middle linebacker to run with wide receiver 3 on the regular?
Yeah.
Like, I get you need to change it up, and you're going to get beat now and then on that and all that stuff. But it was just time after time after time. Like, we have to do something a little different. And some of the reports coming out of camp was that you saw a lot of extra DBs on the field, extra safeties, and Bobby being the only linebacker. So you have extra coverage guys available to take on those responsibilities, to take that pressure off of Bobby. So then he can just be a helper in the passing game and then primarily focus on the run game. And he said, the run game's always just been find the guy with the ball. It's easy. And that made me want to throw my microphone across the freaking room here, because if it's so damn easy, why were we so bad at it last year? And we weren't even great at it the last year that Bobby was here. So I hope it's that damn easy, and I hope they get it figured out. But yeah, that was one of those where I was like, come on, man. Like, it seems to be a little harder than that, or at least for us.
Yeah. Well, it's easy for a guy like Bobby and Quandre, who are very instinctual players. Losing KJ probably was part of that impact too. If you want to go back a couple seasons before you recognized there was some decline in how they defended against the run. But yeah, it's the piece with Bobby, the piece with Quandre, Diggs is another guy who I think really understands the importance of team chemistry, and that plays a part into all of it, into how they work schematically, because it's how well they work together. And so I was really interested in Quandre Diggs' reaction to losing Bobby Wagner, getting promoted to team captain, and then having the former captain of the defense return, and his views on that.
I think it gave me more gray hair. I'll say that, but but it definitely did, open my eyes to, as a captain, people look at you different and expect you to do different things. And for me, I'm just more of a guy that, I kind of like to do things my way, and you do it and you do it the right way, but you feel like you do it the right way, which is your way. And I think Bobby's just, he's more of a chill leader. You know what I mean? I'm more of those ones that I'm going to do it my way. You watch me do it. I think he can also, he can talk his talk, but he also walks his walk. And, not saying I do that, but I'm just more of a, follow me guy and, just go out and make plays. So I think it definitely helped me grow. But, I love having him back. That's why I lobby so hard in the offseason.
So, yeah, him lobbying hard to get Bobby back. Also, trying to read in between the lines in some of his commentary of what kind of leadership styles, because it sounds like both of them are guys who want to set the example. But he referred to Bobby as being a chill leader, whereas maybe Quandre not so much.
Yeah, I can see that. And you've heard some of the other players talk about it just this year, if not over the years, about Bobby's leadership style that way, and how it's not just on the field, it's with all aspects of life, how to be a better dude, how to be a better husband, how to be a better businessman, whatever it is. And I think Quandre, he's a little bit more all about ball. And I could see how that would become exhausting, having to try to be a leader and bring guys along and always be the one with the answers, right? When things are going wrong, everybody looks at you and is like, so what do we do now? And that can become tiring. And I can see why Quandre was like, will you please bring Bobby back so I can take a little of this off my plate until Maul gets back? Like, I would very much like that.
Well, especially losing Al Woods this offseason, because it really was, the captains of the defense, it really sounded like it was Big Al up front and Quandre in the back. And now to have Bobby, at least, it's still going to be a leadership role for Quandre, just based on his time in the league and his importance to players on the team. And but yeah, to share some of that load with Bobby, I think is an important aspect.
Oh, for sure. And it's just another kind of intangible benefit of having somebody like that back and on the team. It's cool because you have some of the older players with those leadership capabilities, and then you have the bulk of the team being in that first or maybe even the beginnings of a second contract, like a DK.
Yeah.
Where you have the young core that is what Pete Carroll works best with. Those are the guys that at that stage of their career, he has a more successful time getting the buy-in that he requires and all of that stuff. And you can feel the excitement from Coach Carroll about that. And you can kind of feel the excitement around the team. Like, we're real lucky. how many like crazy, this guy's holding out, this guy's unhappy, blah, blah, blah stories did we hear over the last few weeks? I'm pretty sure it's zero.
Yeah. And I don't think we have anybody who would fall into that then when we come back into training camp either. I feel like that's all pretty well locked up, right?
Exactly. And so with that said, we're not Buffalo, where you just see this last couple days, Stephon Diggs comes in and causes some sort of stink that I don't think anybody really knows what's going on. They're doing a pretty good job of keeping that in house, but a big enough stink that they canceled the last day of minicamp.
Right.
Like, what is that? Like, we don't have any of that drama. It's really cool. And then to hear Bobby talk about, or no, that was, I was thinking that was Bobby's quote about being in a different place last year. That was just Quandre talking about it. But
yeah,
Bobby's even said, being in a different place, he appreciates being back here in a way that maybe he didn't fully before he had left.
Well, and one of those guys coming to the team is Julian Love on the defense. And it's always interesting to me to hear how some of those veterans then react to Pete Carroll, especially the vets, because college guys, okay, they're coming from college. They don't know what a professional coach is supposed to be like. And so their idea of coaching, I think it's different. But you hear guys come from other teams who have worked with professional coaches who are then exposed to Pete Carroll for the first time and so getting to hear how Julian Love reacted to that, I thought was kind of fun.
He's one of the best I've been around. I didn't know much about him. I'm a Notre Dame guy, obviously USC, you know of him. But just being around him, I can see why he has the respect that he has around the league and just around the football world in general. I mean, sometimes I leave his team meetings and he gives you, a nugget here or there. And you just like, man, that's like, I want to say it to my kids one day. He's that type of leader. I think he was born into it, and he's just, I don't know, he's changed and improved with the times, which not every coach does. So yeah, I mean, I'm really blessed to be able to play here.
So yeah, I thought Pete would be a crusty old guy set in his ways, but not so much in Julian Love's words.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on what media you listen to, because if you listen to a lot of the national media, well, Pete's old and outdated. He's a dinosaur. He likes to run the ball. He'd play defense. He's a terrible coach, da-da-da-da-da. And then you actually look at the resume and then listen to the players talk, like Julian just said there, has changed with the times, and has lots of nuggets because he has been around. Guess what? Having a crap ton of experience isn't a negative.
Right.
That's actually a positive. So, to see somebody like Julian Love come in from, I'm sure last year with, who was it that went and became the head coach there in New York, the guy from Buffalo, the offensive coordinator.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Dable.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure Dable was great, but the coaching that he had before Dable was there was suspect. So having somebody like Pete, who's been around and is established and knows his messaging and all that stuff and has a plan, must be refreshing.
I'm glad that you could come up with Dable, because all that pops into my head is Yukon Cornelius whenever I think of the Giants head coach.
Oh, that's hilarious. I kept thinking Sean McDermott because that's who he worked under, and like I couldn't figure it out. But there it is, Dable.
But Love really is an intriguing piece of the defense and how they're going to use them, because assuming Jamal Adams is healthy and they're not going to say anything negative. So I'm just going to assume everything's on track. Jamal's going to be fine. He's going to be a big part of this defense going into 2023. The flexibility that you hear Coach Clint Hurtt talk about Julian Love having, and how it just makes me think that he could be one of the guys that helps the secondary in a big way and really changes how the defense operates this year.
You're talking about I can cover man-to-man, great awareness in zones. He can blitz, good run-fit guy. All the tricks of the trade that you got to have as a safety. He's multi-dimensional on what you can do with him. Has been highly beneficial. You can play in the post, you can play him in the quarters, you can play him in the box, you can move him out the nickel. Again, because of the different things and displacing personnel and how the offense has to identify people and what you can create protection issue-wise for them, it's great when you have guys that have the mental capacity to do multiple things. If you can lock guys in, the offense can kind of ID and set things the way they want. But when a guy can play multiple positions and to not slow him down in his processing, because Julian is highly intelligent. It helps you a lot.
And let's think about this. They had Ryan Neal on the team and were ready to move on from him after acquiring Julian Love. Like, that wasn't an issue for them, moving on from Ryan Neal. And we really like the idea of, oh, you have Jamal on the field, Ryan Neal, you got Quandre out there. And it just seems like if this is an upgrade and you don't know whether it's Jamal coming off the edge, whether it's Jamal lining up to cover nickel, whether it's Julian coming from another direction, if those guys can be interchangeable in a way, and yeah, maybe Jamal is the more talented of the two, but still you have that flexibility to where it is confusing to the offense, that could be kind of fun.
It could be a lot of fun. And, you know, as 12s, I think we're all most excited about guys like Witherspoon, right? Number 5 pick and things like that. And I'm just as guilty as the next guy. Like, I'm so fired up about that. But somebody like Julian Love is a huge deal. It's a lot like that ancient game that we used to watch like 50, 70 years ago. You'd have the utility infielder that could come in and play all the positions and be very valuable with all the different things that he can do.
Right.
Pretty damn well. That's Julian Love in the back end of the defense. He's that utility player.
Julian Love is the Mike Blowers of Seahawks football.
Very good. Very good. I haven't thought about Mike Blowers in a long time. Great pull there by you. It's pretty neat knowing that you have somebody like that. And then you hear Pete talking about Mike Jackson in the camp that he had. And he was just over the moon about, Mike, and just borderline dominant, I think is what he called
almost dominant, Mike. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you've got somebody like Reek with the talent that he has, and you add in a Julian Love, and then you have Mike Jackson motivated in a certain kind of way because of the draft pick of Witherspoon and that sort of thing. Then you add Witherspoon's talent in, and I mean, fingers crossed that wild card of Jamal Adams being healthy. And I mean, all of a sudden it feels like a super dominant secondary that might just be the ticket in terms of holding up for that half second longer for the pass rush to get there. And guys like Nwosu being able to finish off 2 or 3 of those sacks that he just missed last year.
And they haven't had that depth of talent to where you have to ask yourself, okay, how are they going to get these guys on the field? You're more concerned with, oh my gosh, how is this guy going to perform because he's going to have to start. And when you start looking at it as, okay, well, shoot, if Mike Jackson is this dominant guy on the field and he's not necessarily a slot player, Tariq Woolen isn't necessarily a slot player, how are they going to make that work? Is it going to be Julian Love who's playing in the slot? But you have to get your number 5 pick on the field because Witherspoon's a dominant type of guy. So is he going to be playing the slot? And it sounds like from Pete Carroll that they are working through some of those things, and that Witherspoon really does have that ability to maybe move inside if Mike Jackson is really performing in a way that makes them think that he can come in and they can use those guys kind of interchangeably or move them around.
He's capable of playing in there. Kobe Bryant was banged up with a toe thing that he had to take care of, and so it gave us the opportunity to take a look at Spoon inside, and so he was excited. I talked to him about it way back when, and he was all excited about it. He said, I can learn it all, I can get it, and he's really positive about it. So when we gave him the chance, he jumped right on it. He is a really good football learner. I mean, he gets it, man, and it makes sense to him, and he does things naturally really well, and that expedites the process. And so we've seen this will be really good film again today to check him out. But we've seen him, look pretty much in charge of the position. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, they had Spoon on the inside playing a little bit of nickel. And then I did read one report that said, well, I mean, they had him in there just to see what he'd look like in space playing man-to-man. And if he could be that guy, maybe that's a smoke screen. I don't know. I'll let you guys figure that out. But it has been interesting to see them deploy him in a few different spots and see what sort of versatility they have in that player. I found it interesting too. I don't know if you saw the clip, Brandon, was titled something like Jackson Smith and Jigba roast Witherspoon on a route, and it was, shorts and helmets, and they ran a scissor route or a switch route or whatever the hell you want to call it, kind of a natural pick, and Smith and Jigba got a step, and cool, but they painted it as if Witherspoon got absolutely roasted on that play, a fake play to begin with, but
right.
I think he has the potential to be there in the nickel, and I don't understand why Mike Jackson doesn't have the potential to play the nickel slot position. It seems like he would have the skill set for that too. He's not slow-footed or unathletic. He doesn't seem to have some of those limitations that, say, like Kobe Bryant does.
I think you're looking for a guy who changes direction well, and I don't know if we quite saw that from Mike Jackson enough. I mean, just from watching the games, I would assume Pete Carroll and Clint Hurtt would have a whole lot better idea of what he could do with that respect. So
not than us. What are you trying to say?
I'm saying that if we'd be having a very different conversation if Pete Carroll in that clip would have brought up the idea of Mike Jackson's making his case over Kobe Bryant versus them playing Mike on the outside and being almost dominant versus moving Witherspoon inside. So those are the type of clues that you can get from the press conferences, is that just the way they talk about these particular guys, we're not talking about Mike Jackson playing the slot.
It hasn't really been uttered. Now, whether or not that's all part of the plan too, of, putting out the misinformation about how they want to play. It's always hard to say, but I will give Pete credit. Like, he does try to be as transparent as possible, I think, with the media. And
yeah,
that doesn't mean he's not smoke screening and doing things and saying stuff like he does. But I think you can take about 70% of it and be like, I think it's coming from the right place. Or maybe he doesn't paint the full picture, but he gives you just enough breadcrumbs to kind of
piece it together a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of it too is through this part of the off season, some of that stuff they don't know. They're trying to piece that together themselves. We've heard some of the conversation, and we'll get into it on the offensive side of the coaches. The reporters really want to know, is it going to be Olu who ends up taking more snaps at center? Is it going to be Evan Brown who takes more snaps at center? And you hear the coaches, they're like, I don't know. We're not really to the point of figuring out who's going to get what snaps. That's going to come in training camp. This is about knowing what we have in the guys, and maybe you can read into some of that too a little bit, but you aren't going to know right now.
It's true. You don't know. And you heard Pete talk about the center position battle, which is a fascinating thing to watch throughout the offseason.
Right.
I mean, I really am on the edge of my seat about that, because this is a big freaking deal. If Oluwatimi can come in and be that guy and solve the center position after all these years of the Unger curse just killing us. I mean, we really haven't had a steady force there since Justin Britt.
Right.
It would be really nice to have that sort of player. And you kind of get the feeling that Evan Brown is a bit in the Matt Flynn position in this competition. He got paid a little bit, but it's only for a year. How many times have you had any of these guys in these pressers or anything utter the name Evan Brown? Nobody talks about him. And I understand the reporters are asking about Oluwatimi.
Yeah.
I get that. But I mean, give him a little credit. You hear them talk about Joey Hunt more somehow. I don't know why that is, but Pete saying just like, look, we're not in a hurry. Why don't you guys just cool your jets a little bit? It's going to be okay. By the time the season starts, we're going to have a starting center there. And Oluwatimi looks good. He's strong enough. He's smart enough and all that. We'll just see how it works out. Let it buff out.
I think the closest that we heard to that discussion was with offensive line coach Andy Dickerson, because he was asked what makes the team think that center is the better spot for Evan Brown, because he did play guard. He did play center in Detroit. And so why necessarily does he think that center is the best spot for him?
You see something in his tape at playing center for the Lions instead of playing guard, I guess? I mean, do you think he's more of a center or?
He can play both, which is a benefit. The ability to play both, those swing guys have to be able to do that. And so when you watch the center tape, you see certain things and you see stuff at guard tape, okay, he can do this as well. So, and there's a lot of that stuff translates inside. If you can play center, you should be able to play guard, and he's shown he's been able to do that at a good level.
So this is a great spot where we can look at Andy Dickerson's answer and say, because the question is very specifically about Evan Brown at center, is like, well, he can play guard too. He can, and if you can play center, you can usually play guard.
Andy Dickerson sounds exactly like Shane Waldron.
Right.
Like, you could have told me that was Waldron, and I've been like, oh yeah, totally. That's who that was. Andy Dickerson is a fascinating piece to this team and his role and what he brings. Do you remember all the years we were bitching up and down about Tom Cable?
Yeah.
And the offensive line? What a joy it is to have a guy
who is
building a really good unit here, and a guy that I have all the faith in the world in. I really want Brandon. Let's see if we can do it. I really want to see if we can get him in this 6-week break for 20 minutes. I think that would be an amazing interview. He's totally undersold and unsung. He's a huge deal, and he gets disrespected by the entire league, including Pro Football Focus with their ridiculous list that had the Seahawks offensive line like 28th in the league or some nonsense like that.
I've always wanted an offensive line coach that I could be excited about that. And Tom Cable was supposed to be that guy, guy who elevated himself to Raiders head coach and then ended up having to take a step back, partly for some things of his own doing, but it was viewed as a really great offensive line coach. And I don't think we ever saw the greatness, but it's a guy like Dickerson who the proof is in we've seen the proof. Right?
Yeah.
It's
in the pudding.
It's in the pudding.
Yeah.
I just, after Bill Cosby, I don't like talking about pudding, but
you can't let that jerk off ruin pudding. Like, I'm
He's
not going to give him that sort of
Adam.
power. Yeah, no, I refuse. Pudding's still good, and screw Bill Cosby. But yeah, man, it is nice to feel excited about that position group and the coaching there. I just look at the way the rookies performed last year. D-Lou had another very good year. They got the best out of Austin Blythe that you could get, with a mediocre season. That's good coaching right there. He took an aging Gabe Jackson and a journeyman in Phil Haynes, borderline backup, borderline starter in Phil Haynes, and made them serviceable and gave Geno Smith the opportunity to come out and show what he can do. I love Andy Dickerson. I want to talk to that dude. I want to hear so much more about offensive line play and learn some stuff. If it's not this year, then next year. One of these years, we're getting this guy.
Getting it done.
This is on my bucket list.
Well, Coach Waldron, we also heard from him, and I know one of the guys that is on your list frequently for a guy who can show you something this year, because he's a guy who we haven't seen a lot of, is D. Eskridge. And there have been high expectations. And so if he can stay healthy, and it has been a big if, it sounds like there's a role for him. And there's that expectation, too, that I think Shane Waldron still has, that there was some excitement that he could be that guy that they drafted.
The biggest thing with D is, just that availability and being out there. And like I said, a lot of it's through circumstances outside of his control. And so, just like when we drafted him, you still feel the explosion and the twitchiness on the field. So looking to get a chance to have that out there consistently and see where he competes and falls in with that group of receivers.
And with Eskridge, I feel like some of my thinking gets caught up to where associating him with Rashad Penny and the types of injuries that he worked through. Whereas I feel like now in hindsight with Penny, a lot of his injuries were more mindset related. Like he had small injuries that he had to fight through. Whereas when I hear Waldron kind of remind me about the things being out of Eskridge's control, I think back to the very first game where he is concussed, just nearly running out of bounds, doesn't get out of bounds in time. And then he's out for an extended period of time. And a concussion is one of those things that we're finding out now isn't something you want to hurry back from. And they're being a lot more careful with these guys too. So that part out of his control. Last season, breaks his hand toward the end of the season. Kind of a fluky type thing. And yeah, there was a hamstring issue mixed in there too. So there was a soft tissue injury that you have to be concerned about. And you can't rush back from those either. So having that combination, there's one that you want to be more long-term concerned with in terms of soft tissue with the hamstring, and two that were kind of fluky things.
It's true. And it has been disappointing because he's drafted in the second round. He looks amazing on tape when you look back at his stuff. And I think where he could really shine this year is in the return game. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think he is that dude who can make that happen. He has the hands for it and he's got the explosiveness for it. And just having him as wide receiver 4 and being ready to go, the availability that Waldron was talking about would be massive. Because I think the drop off between him and DK, let's say, isn't nearly as bad as like DK to Derek Young, or, you know, DK to Cody Thompson, or DK to K Johnson, right, or, you know, something like that. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
with all due respect to those guys.
Oh, NFL players. And I'm not trying to bash on him or anything like that. It's just that Eskridge has a talent to him,
right?
That
he was drafted in the second round. Those other guys were drafted 7th round, undrafted. Yeah.
And it was all for a reason. So it would be awesome to have him ready to go, because I don't think he's wrestling away wide receiver 3, because it sounds like JSN, he's the talk of the camp this year. And it reminds me a lot of when Russ came in his rookie year and you heard from rookie minicamp, oh, this guy's got it. He's already picking it all up. And then you started to hear about it more and more and more as you go through the process here leading up to preseason. In the last little article I saw, JSN, he's treated like one of the vets now because he's so damn good. Nothing hits the ground. He's super smooth. He's unique. I'm starting to believe, man. I'm starting to believe.
How excited were you when you heard Geno Smith get asked one of your favorite questions of all times? Because you like to know about what makes a good route runner. And so Geno in his press conference was glowing about how JSN was this really good route runner. So the follow-up came and he's asked, and the funny thing is you've asked this to wide receivers who have played the position. Yeah. What makes a good route runner? And, you know, the answers haven't been the greatest, but you hear it from Geno and his perspective. We get to hear from him what makes Jackson Smith and Jigba a good route runner.
You know, I think it starts with body control. You know, obviously you want guys who are very fast, very quick, but if they can't get in and out of cuts, I mean, it really doesn't matter. So he's got great body control. He's actually a very physical, you know, guy. He's not the biggest in stature or the, you know, widest, but you can see when he runs, he has that route strength, and guys don't really knock him off his course really too often. And so you look for those things in guys: body control. You know, how are they at the top of the route? That 3-cone shuttle is very important. You know, how are they in and out of cuts? And I think he's really good at all those.
Yeah, a lot of jargon there. One of my new favorite phrases that I got out of that was route strength. That's strength. A new one to me.
And if you think about it, guys who are easily knocked off the route, it speaks to smaller guys. And you think that, they get pushed around a lot. And you think about a guy like Tyler. Like, he's a small guy, but you don't see him necessarily he's in the spot that he needs to be to receive the football, which is an important part to route running. And I've never heard, when you've asked that question of receivers, they've never talked about, you got to have good route strength, or you have to have good body control. They don't talk about that.
They often don't. And then you hear the buzzwords like, well, what are they like at the top of the route? What are they like getting in and out of breaks? And like, I've always wanted that explained. And I listen to a lot of dudes. I've been listening to Steve Smith a lot this offseason and things like that, like trying to figure out, like, what are they talking about? Because it just sounds like buzzwords. And what I finally have landed on is it's a lot like the NBA. And when you're running the route, what they're talking about at the top of your route, you come off the line, you're kind of going straight forward for either just a short period of time or a long period of time. When you get to where you're about ready to make a move one way or the other, it's knowing where you're supposed to be, reading the body language of the DB and knowing what sort of leverage they have, knowing where the holes are if it's zone, knowing if you have this guy beat by a step if it's man, and then being able, they say, getting in and out of your breaks. That's what I finally have figured out is the guys who are great at it, they do it in very few steps. They can go from full throttle to taking a 90 and going the other direction in 2 steps, where it takes most other professional receivers 4 steps.
Yeah.
Like
they have big sack.
They have all the sack. And so that helps a lot.
Short area quickness for those unfamiliar with the acronym.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but yeah, short area quickness. And JSN has it in spades from what everybody says. In, we talked to our buddy Phil Leidick, who hosts What If, and he's like, it's impossible not to get excited about this guy. Just watch his stuff and tell me that you don't see it. And it's just not a position I do well with, especially slot receiver, being able to judge what's good or not. He sees something and is all fired up. Everybody else sees something and is all fired up. So they're dragging me along, man. I'm starting to get fired up about this pick, and I can't wait to see it in practice.
The thing I'm most fired up about, though, is when I hear aspects of culture throughout different answers, whether it's Quandre answering questions, whether it's Tyler Lockett answering questions, or DK, there's, and we'll hear it in this clip. There's not a lot there until we get to the end of the clip, but we're going to hear from DK about how Geno Smith as quarterback and really being in command of the offense and the team now going in through this offseason is how he's trying to create a brotherhood, which it's in line with what we've seen Pete try and do in the past. And so when you have that part of the culture really permeating through Pete to a guy like Geno, who can then command it down to other parts of the team, that's one of the things that has me excited.
After last year, you go into the offseason wondering if he's going to be our quarterback next year or not. And, once we got the news that he was going to be our quarterback, it's like, all right, we can just pick up from where we left off last year. And that's him being a great leader like he was during the whole season last year. And just his energy and his passion to win and to continue to compete. He's been here since day one of OTAs and since they started off-season workouts. So, he's just been trying to get everybody along and bring everybody, to a team atmosphere to where this is a brotherhood and not just, us coming to work. So that's the one thing that he's trying to instill in the offense and instill in his team.
And the reason it excites me is because I think culture plays such an important part toward team chemistry and success. And so it's good to hear it from DK. It shows that it's understood. I think about how Bobby's the only one left from the Super Bowl team, because that was such a big aspect to that team. LOB wasn't Legion of Boom. It's Love Our Brothers, right? And that was the acronym to them. To see that kind of carry through now to another stage of the Seahawks team with Pete Carroll still at the helm, I think it's important.
It's extremely important. In this team, the way that it's currently constructed, with the bulk of the roster of guys being young dudes, they're all in the same place in their time frame as far as what they're trying to accomplish with their career, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot easier for the team to unify together when all the guys are kind of in the same space for the most part in their goals and what they're trying to get done and in all of that. So, and then to have a coach that he really does connect with younger players and gets the buy-in from those guys a lot better than he does with veterans who they can tend to get a little cantankerous and get tired of a rah-rah message and maybe want a little bit more of like, well, let's just get real about this. Like, this guy can't do this anymore. And then you start getting the strife and all that. This team is really in a window here this year and next year that is just right in the Pete Carroll wheelhouse. And you got guys like Geno and Bobby that are the older players. You need a few of those.
Right.
that can help, bring these and drag these young guys along. And then you've got a core that should be able to bond and have that brotherhood early on in your career, like those early LOB years, and really become a juggernaut. And it really is a difference between winning and losing, your connectivity with the rest of your teammates and the reasons why you're out there on the field. If you're out there for the guy next to you, you're willing to eat that extra block, be the receiver running the decoy route for the 15th time in a row so that another guy eats. You're more willing to do all that because you love those dudes around you. Otherwise, if you don't, it's a lot easier to become bitter.
Right.
Within that.
Yeah, it really does bring me back to after going to the couple Super Bowls, you got more of the sense of, okay, goals had been accomplished. Guys were then the new goal was, okay, how do I set myself up for the future and get paid? And now you have enough of a balance to where, okay, Gino's gotten paid, DK, Tyler, they're paid. You got on the other side, you got Quandre, but are also in that mindset of still having the goal of the chip. And so,
yes,
whereas it wasn't the case where you had, okay, well, we got chips, we got paid. Not to say that they weren't extremely professional and, ready to, lay it all out there. It's just different. Yeah. It's just different.
Yeah. And no knock on any of the dudes from, those years, 13, 14, 15 of the Seahawks. No knock at all. Like, at some point you do need to worry about, am I setting myself up for the future? As you can see the end of your career a little more clearly coming at you through the windshield, right? Because it's a short window. So it's a natural thing for teams to go through, but it does point to the fact that it's much more difficult to deal with success than it is adversity.
Right.
And you see teams all the time fall to Pat Riley's the disease of more. And the Seahawks were able to, in the Russell Wilson trade was a big part of this, jettison some of the disease of more that had infected the team, which is natural and nobody's fault really, and get back to a bunch of dudes that are hungry and ready to prove it, that have been discounted, that whole chip on your shoulder thing.
Again, it takes me back to where we started the show with talking about Geno Smith. It's a different type of conversation around the quarterback spot in particular. And like you said, no knock on the guys who were there and did it. And, I'm always going to have a special place for Russ. But
those are my dudes, man, including Russ.
And,
yeah.
But I'm starting to get on board with Geno because that's who the team is rallying around. And I could see him being the guy. And we'll probably hear from one of the guys in the second half of the show that maybe isn't on board yet. But I think for some people, it's just going to take, whether it's a few more games, another season, maybe it takes winning in the playoffs before they finally come around. It might just be what it takes for some people.
I guess. And that's what's hard. Like, as fans, we all get a little persnickety with one another on different topics throughout, especially the offseason, especially this time of year, right?
Yeah.
Where there's not a lot of objective evidence about what these guys are in this moment in front of us. Like, we don't have game tape from last Sunday.
No, we have to listen to press conferences and read between the lines on some of their answers.
Right. And then extrapolate from what we've seen before and do all that stuff. But for the life of me, I cannot understand looking back at last year and at any point being like, yep,
that guy's the problem.
That guy's the problem. I don't see it. I as much as I went back and watched that 49ers game, like I said, about a month ago or whatever, the playoff game.
Yeah.
At no point in that game was like, man, Geno just doesn't have his poop in a group today. Like, it's just not happening. And it's because Geno's playing like crap. It was, oh my God, we got bum rushed in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And
we were still in it for the first 3 quarters of the game.
Yes. Yes. So I can't understand having a lot of trepidation about Geno this year coming in with all the support he has around. I don't get it.
Well, we will have more time to talk about it, and we'll probably get into it a little bit more in the second half of the show.
Sounds good, man.
Well, we spent a lot of time in the first half of the show talking about things that we were excited about, but there are still some areas, Adam, of the team that people are either less than excited about or they see potential for improvement, right? And I think one of those places on the defensive line.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I feel like I've, beaten the dead horse, buried it, dug it back up with an excavator, hit it a few more times. Maybe, took a leak on it, peed on it, and then just, buried it again and brought it back up for the 40th time. But I mean, geez Louise, man, like it is a little concerning, some of the depth, especially in the interior defensive line. And the thing is that there's been some trades proposed or bantied about by some media members, and one would actually address that and one wouldn't. And the two rumors were, one has been a powerful one's been, trading for Chase Young of the Commandos.
Right.
And there's feelings to be had about that. And then the other one that Brock and Salk brought up the other day on Seattle Sports was trading for Aaron Donald. And that's a whole nother can of worms that we can talk about too. And I don't know if that's based in any truth or, anything anybody's been hearing, or it's more just like circumstantial. Aaron Donald, older player on a rebuilding team, that sort of thing. In the Rams could use the draft capital. I mean, but would they even trade that in division? All that's a whole nother ball of wax as well. But
let's work through this, because the question of whether they would trade in the division is probably the one that you would have to overcome first. Trades within the division aren't unprecedented. They are rare, but they do happen.
Yeah.
A guy like Aaron Donald could say, hey, I'm not coming back to play for the Rams under any circumstances. Trade me. And a guy like that is going to be able to command a couple spots where he would like to go. Having Bobby Wagner, that connection now, having the Shane Waldron connection, there are connections to people in Seattle where Aaron Donald may say, hey, I've got some people there that I know, and that could be a destination where he wants to go. We've also talked about how this year for the Rams may not be one where they're looking at winning as a possibility. It may be a bridge year toward future goals for them.
Yeah. I think they're about a 6-win team this year.
Right.
That's what I think. That's higher than a lot of people have them. They still have some talent on that roster. They still have Sean McVay. They were still competitive with a shell of a roster towards the end of the season last year. I mean, we barely beat the Zombie Rams last week of the season to give us a chance to get in to the playoffs. So I don't think they're dead, but it all kind of, both those players trading for Donald or Young, it all hinges around the idea of, you think they're one defensive line player away from being a team that can win a chip. And there's an argument to be made on both sides of that coin.
Okay, so whether or not they are one defensive lineman away, I have a hard time thinking that interior defense matters enough for that to be a position that hinges on a chip. Like, how many teams that are Super Bowl?
Whoa! Whoa!
No, I'm saying that you can still be a good defense and not have a dude in the middle of the defense that wrecks things.
Okay, yeah, you may not need to have a generational player as Aaron Donald is, but you need to be good in the trenches.
Well, I think they can be good with what they have. So whether or not you're talking about whether or not being a player away, though.
Because that's kind of the way you'd need to view this, I guess, if you're John Schneider. In a trade for either of those two guys at this point, it just doesn't feel like it's in their DNA. Now, I know they've gone out and gotten, guys in the past. I'm blanking on the defensive lineman.
Sheldon Richardson.
Yep, Richardson, and other dudes along the way. But number one, Chase Young, does that interest you or not interest you?
It interests me just based off of the compensation that people are talking about, like a 3rd round pick for Chase Young. If that's all it is, why not? 3rd round pick. That's what we are due from the this trade from last year that we're getting from either New Orleans or Broncos. Yeah.
So
that kind of feels like a bonus and a low risk move.
Okay. Because I was curious. I hadn't seen what the potential compensation would be. I was curious what you thought it would be. Because I'm interested in Chase Young if it's like a Clowney type of deal.
Yeah.
Like in a 3rd would be a Clowney type of deal.
And maybe you get him a little bit sooner. That would be nice because Clowney, obviously, it was a couple weeks into the season before they made that deal.
Right.
Maybe that is the kind of deal that makes more sense because then you get a few weeks too to see what you have and if there's even a spot for him on the team, right? Because if some of the young guys come in and they play great, then you start to wonder, oh, well, gosh, if Derek Hall shines, if Boye Mafe comes back and is really good and maybe there's not necessarily a spot for Chase Young and then you give a 3rd round pick and you're trying to figure out how to make the rotation work.
Exactly. And I don't feel like we're an edge player away. Like that doesn't solve the interior defensive line issue.
Right.
And he's a guy whose last 2 years have been injury plagued. He missed an entire season or was it 2 entire seasons? It's been a lot of games one way or the other with the knee issue. I mean, a 3rd almost seems high. Wasn't Clowney like a 6th?
It was a 2020 3rd round pick, Barkevius Mingo and Jacob Martin.
All right. Still a coup. That was still a coup for that year.
Mm-hmm.
No, to be honest, I'm kind of out on the Chase Young idea.
Okay. It would. I think it would have to be an injury situation to make it work anyway, just based off of the depth and not knowing if it would necessarily be an upgrade.
And with their track record, middle rounds, those are valuable picks. So you don't just give those away. Now, what about Aaron Donald? Like what seems like a commiserate compensation package for this stage of his career, Aaron Donald?
It would have to be a contentious type situation for it, I think, it to even work, to where he's saying, I'm not coming back, and it being public. And
let's say that's in the ether. Yeah.
Because otherwise, then you're talking about obviously higher than a 2nd or higher than a 3rd, because if you're talking about a 3rd for a guy who's been injured routinely, it's still...
But is young.
He's still young, but you're talking about a proven player who doesn't get hurt a lot and can come in and fills a need and maybe paying a premium because it's within the division and just the Rams they're going to need to get something. Would they do it for a 2nd? And would you give up a 2nd?
So. And even if it was for a 2nd, I don't think I'd do it for a year.
I don't know if that's where I go back to. I don't know if that position makes enough of a difference to where it puts you over the top.
I mean, if you are getting 2 years ago, Aaron Donald,
but then you're giving up more than a 2nd.
Probably. But he missed a lot of games last year. He's getting a little longer in the tooth. He's already talked about retirement.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're in that Aaron Rodgers zone of bringing a dude in and being like, well, I hope he plays for a while. Like, otherwise we just gave up a bunch of stuff for a year. And I just don't think that's where this team is in its progression either.
I would be really excited about it just based on the fact that there's 2 games where we don't have to go against Aaron Donald.
That would be sweet.
Yeah. I mean, that alone is probably worth a 4th.
Yeah. I mean, and does he make Sam Bradford's life miserable when we play the Niners?
Uh-huh.
Like, that would be kind of fun.
Sam Bradford or Sam Darnold, one of the two, depending on who they decide.
Did I say Bradford?
Yeah.
Holy cow. I've got my Sams mixed up. I mean, where did I get mixed up on the last show?
They might be the Sam Bradford by the time that we face the Niners. You don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. Yeah. See what old Bradford's up to. Man alive. Yeah. But yeah, Sam Darnold. That's what I meant to say when making fun of the 49ers. Now the joke isn't even funny because I screwed it up.
I'm sorry. Pathetic. You ruined it.
Oh, well. I ruined it. I ruined my own joke. But I don't know, man. I hear those rumors and I think about both those and I'm like, I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too. They made their move on the defensive interior, going out and getting Draymond Jones. I'm kind of intrigued by Mike Morris, though, just hearing some of the ways that Clint Hurtt was talking about him. I just wonder if he's going to be able to make that transition from the outside to more of the inside and have it be a success. I suppose that's why you spend a mid to late round pick on him rather than drafting him earlier on. It's low risk in that regard, but I kind of like him as an edge player based on his size, and they're definitely moving him inside.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not into the edge player thing, and I think it's a smart thing because now you move him inside and he was already up to 290 last time we checked.
Hurt said he was at 297, and that's where he likes him.
There you go. So he's basically 300.
Yeah,
and you can get him inside. Now he's a plus athlete for that position rather than having him on the edge and being a big dude and being a minus athlete for that position. I think it's great. I'm really high on Mike Morris. I'm super excited to see what he can do. They talked about Cam Young in his progression. And it's funny. I think it was Pete that was talking. He's like, well, yeah, I mean, there's only so many things to learn as a nose tackle. Like, block this guy soak up this block and also soak up that block and either go left or right.
Right.
So it's not like the mental side of the game should be too much of a challenge. Be interesting to see what happens there. We'll see if, Mr. Reed can do what we all hope he can do. And I'm talking myself into the guys that they have there to be good enough to take this from a god awful dumpster fire of a run defense team to, okay, we can stop most people.
That's all it really needs to be in the run game. Unless, I guess the place where it does concern me is that I think it could be a heavily, that the entire division could lean heavily toward the run. And so it's those games in particular that you have to worry about. And it's still a concern. It's just, they've made some moves and you have to hope that it's going to be enough. And I'd be more excited about trading for Sebastian Joseph Day than Aaron Donald, because that actually addresses the run with a guy who's really good at stopping the run and is a former Ram.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And probably the trade compensation, not as high as we're talking about with somebody like Aaron Donald, who knows if he's even available or if any of that's even true. It was just something that was bantied about.
Yeah.
And I thought it was worth, kind of just touching on because, I heard that my initial gut reaction was no.
Mm-hmm.
And then thought about it. And then I was like, nope, still no.
The place where I get to, and I'll go back to it, is just not having to face him twice. Yeah. Take away a pick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are moving into the part of the show where, hey, we get to recognize some of our members of the flock. They went to getintheflock.com. We've got our executive producers. We've got DCH. We've got Brian Shaw. We've got Becca Christensen. And we've got some new flockers as well, or flockers who have sent us a raise or left for a bit or come back. And we've got Jeffrey Robichaud in there at $12.12 a month. And I think Jeffrey falls into one of those categories of coming back. So welcome back, Jeffrey.
Yeah, welcome back, bud. And we'll be seeing you in the Ring of Honor and all the fun things that come along with that. So.
And maybe Jeffrey wasn't gone long. I don't track it that closely. It could be that they change out their card and then it just pops up on my list as becoming a patron. But I want to make sure that people are appropriately recognized when it shows up on my list.
Absolutely.
Kale Lively in at $60 for the year. So welcome to the flock to Kale.
Hey, I appreciate it, Kale. Somebody who comments a ton on the YouTube videos and is a great supporter there. And so I appreciate Kale a ton. He's an awesome little flock.
And did I have a donation from Hank? I have his comment here. Did he come back in with a raise? I don't have the amount. Maybe I just copied over the comment, but I got Hank coming in saying, hey guys, Cole Hawk here, longtime member. Just wanted to share my thoughts. I do love all the new content, but the flagship show is my favorite. I believe that I'm averse to change.
You're just like me.
Yeah. It's just, think of it as an addition as opposed to change.
Yeah, exactly. Just more. I mean, we're still doing the flagship show and we're going to continue to do the flagship show. And, it will be doing even more of them as things get cranked up here in July.
It's the off season. This is One of the fun things this offseason with the other shows is it makes it easier to do content that focuses more toward that than the content that focuses more on the flagship side, if that makes sense. It lends itself better to some of the other formats.
Yeah, short form as opposed to long form, right? It's a lot easier to do a 20-minute vid or audio production than it is, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then also too, like, we're kind of using this time to experiment and play around and try to get better at some of this stuff and, get our setups just tuned in just right and figure out a schedule and all of those things. So I hope people don't feel as if we're neglecting the flagship more than we should, because it is on our radar. And it's been nice to be able to wait a little extra time so that there's enough content to really kind of dig into to give you guys a show that I think is worth it.
And as we get back to our members of the flock, we got Simon Wilson in at £3. So welcome to the flock to Simon.
Appreciate it, Simon. Love the pounds.
Coming in from
great,
overseas.
Man.
That's always fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Josh Height in at $5 a month. Welcome to the flock to Josh.
That feels like a very familiar name. I feel like that's maybe coming back.
Didn't we go to school with the Josh Fight?
We did. Maybe that's where my head's
I think
at.
that's why. Because that name hit me that way too. And I was like, wait a second. Do I know that person?
The reason why I definitely remember Josh Fight is he had a pool at his house, which nobody has in Montana, especially back then. And we all got to go over there for his birthday as a class. And it was really cool.
Yeah. See, that's exactly why it sticks out in your mind.
Yeah.
Fernando Tejada gave us a raise from $3 or just going to an annual donation versus the monthly. So Fernando in at $60 annually. So thanks to Fernando.
Heck yeah, man. We appreciate you, Fernando. You've been with us for so long. And, all you longtime little flockers, man, like, thanks for sticking with us. It's easy to come and go and fade in and out of things and all that. So I'm glad that, we're important enough to keep in your rotation of things to listen to. It's appreciated.
I mean, shoot, people even hanging in there who get offended by some of your comments, particularly in previous shows. Tyler emailed in to GoHawks at SeahawkersPodcast.com. And I think this was taking issue with, now I don't think I was on this particular show with you guys because it was, or was I? No, I wasn't. This was you and maybe Phil and Clinton. But anyway, Tyler emails in and says, you guys must love me on field goals. I should do a voice for this one because this to me comes across somewhat arrogant, Tyler.
Okay.
So I may have to.
Okay.
I may have to read this as it comes across to me, just so you know how it makes me feel.
Okay.
You guys must love me on field goals. I heard reference today to comments there that I'm almost positive was based part on me, with the mockery and dismissal of the position that Geno had regression second half of the season. I listen to a lot of Seahawks podcasts, read multiple sites, am a season ticket holder, and a huge fan. I'm as knowledgeable as anyone out there, including yourselves. And it's okay if we have different positions. It's more than okay. It should be welcomed and warranted. Now I kind of feel like a jerk for doing the arrogant voice.
Yeah.
However, I try more and more with age when making my position not to mock others with legitimate points, and especially not to mock people with disabilities either. The accent/inflection was less than classy and completely dismisses legitimate concern. Geno did regress second half of the season. There are many factors attached to that, including the offensive line struggles mentioned. There was also better defenses. But there are also curious factors like our offense stalling almost every second half of every season, regardless of quarterback or coordinator, that remains unanswered. Basically, my point is, it's a legitimate position that Geno is somewhere between the 10th and 17th quarterback in the league, and he's probably as likely to be 20th as he is 7th. To dismiss anything other than he's top 10 to top 5 with an accent of people with disabilities is a really bad take. I think your show is better than that, whether I agree with your positions or not. It's not enough that I'm going to stop listening, but if that straw man framing of an argument using the accent and inflection of a person with disabilities is used again, whether it's my position mocked or not, I will probably move on. Not okay. From Tyler.
Okay. Did I give the derp voice? Is that what?
I don't know. I thought that was a Muppet voice.
Anybody with a disability. What I'm mocking is people that have terrible takes or maybe just don't think through what they're saying before they say it. So, no, I'm not mocking people with disabilities. If you'd like to take it that way, you're more than welcome. It's a free country. But with that said, the idea of Geno regressing the second half of the year is true. It's true. Tyler, we all listened to people say that. We even brought it up throughout the discussion that, yes, Geno regressed slightly the second half of the season. Now, that we can agree on that, which I think is pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple to agree on. Okay. When do you look at it? And you look at the reasons why Geno regressed. It wasn't because Geno just stopped playing good football. That isn't it. Tyler went through them. He went through them. Faced better defenses. Offensive line regress. Maybe there's some coaching issues there with offense doing well in the second half of the year. Maybe that is part of it. The run game stalling. All of that. You start to answer your own question here, Tyler. I understand that based on a slight regression in the second half of last year, you're out on Geno. To me, that's an absurd position. I mean, it's like being in a relationship with somebody and they have a bad week, even though you've had 3 great years, and you're like, see you later. Can't deal with that. I don't understand how you can't go back and watch the tape and watch Geno go through his progressions, be on time with the ball, make good decisions, get the line and good line calls, do everything that he can to set this team up for success, and was the strength of the team throughout the entire season, including the second half of the year with his regression. Then you're just not watching the games. Like that's it. And like you said, we can disagree all day long, and I'm good with it. And maybe this comment hit me a little different with Brandon's voiceover of it. We'll see if that tone of voice is appreciated or not from certain people. But I just think you're dead wrong, man. I think you're dead wrong. I'll double down on it. I'll triple down on it. And I'll use whatever voice I want when I want to.
We use different voices depending on how different commentaries come across. I think it's pretty rude to think that we're making up voices that made it sound like someone has a disability in particular, especially of people. 2 of us have kids with physical issues. So
yep.
So it hits me as pretty rude, especially when they think that, oh, they must be talking about me because I'm the only one that has this perspective. And I post regularly about it on Field Goals, which you and I do not read Field Goals comments. I know Phil does because he's a prolific commenter there, and that's his. So a lot of times maybe he's bringing in issues where he sees them in the comments, but it's not where you and I live. And it's not that unique of a position to think that you have this thought.
And I will make fun of anybody I deem appropriate for a bad take. And you can do the same back to me.
Yeah.
That is fine. People do it all the time. It's okay. I guess my big problem with it is I'm so sick of outrage culture and everybody taking everything anybody says and then all of a sudden they're offended by it. Like, come on, man.
And I did want to address it because it isn't and really that's why I've tried to preface many of our takes on Geno of just recognizing that there are so many of us that aren't fully on board. Like there's still that point of skepticism. And maybe I will agree with Tyler that around the idea of, he could be 20th best quarterback in the league. He could be 7th best quarterback in the league coming in next year. If he's 20th, though, I don't even know if I would see that as a negative, depending on what we're talking about in terms of, is he 20th in yardage? Because if that's the case, that just means that they're pounding the rock with Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and they have a more balanced offense than they did the previous season. That would be okay with me. If he's the 20th in terms of passing yards, and he has 30 touchdowns at the end of the season, and they've got 2 of the top running backs in the league, and they have a solid record, that's going to be a success for Geno Smith.
Heck yeah. So in regards to the 20th or 7th thing, like, he's not wrong. Those are all possibilities. I will not rule them out. But Tyler did say that he believes that it's much more likely could be the 20th best quarterback than the 7th.
As likely.
As likely? Okay, I thought he said more
He's
likely.
He's probably as likely to be 20th as 7th.
I still disagree with that. He's not as likely to be the 20th best quarterback. He is more likely to be the 7th best quarterback than he is the 20th. Like, it's just more likely with everything that he's done the last 3 years in the South. And again, it's not like he's just coming in and learning the ropes.
Right.
This isn't a wild card. There's continuity all around him. If there was a position to be in, to be set up for success for a guy like Geno, this is it all the way around.
It's set up very well for him, for sure.
Now, with that said, coming into last year, I wanted to see Drew Lock. I didn't think there was any way Geno could have a year like he did. I totally dismissed the guy, and I was dead ass wrong. So I'm admitting that right here, right now, like I have many times before, and I will do the same if we get through this season and Geno is closest to the 20th best quarterback. And I'm not talking about yards or anything like that. We could talk about QB rating, not QBR. QBR sucks. We could talk about it in terms of just listing, quarterbacks, things like that. Just an overall play. And if it happens that he's much closer to that, I'll come on here and I will mock myself with whatever voice Tyler would like me to mock myself. I'll do it.
Well, and I wouldn't necessarily speak for Tyler, but I think some of the people who are hanging on to the idea that Geno could be a worse quarterback maybe aren't willing to accept that they were wrong going into last season. You come
Maybe
into the
that's
opinion with Geno's a terrible quarterback. He's never going to be good. Oh, okay, he kind of lucked his way into a great season, but we're going to be back to seeing regular Geno coming into next season because I still am holding on to that idea that he's not good. Like you're saying, when you watch the components of his game, not necessarily the outcome, not necessarily the extra times where he was trying to fit it in smaller windows to maybe bring the team back from when they were down. But when you look at his work within the pocket, when you look at his decision-making in terms of going to the right spot with the football, looking at his footwork, those types of issues, his accuracy, those are things that are repeatable. It's not, you can't fluke your way into better decision-making. You can't fluke your way into having solid footwork or, deciding where to go or making good decisions within the pocket. Those are just things that you have.
Yeah, he didn't fluke his way into having a relatively quick release, a really tight spiral. He throws the ball as a nice tight spiral way more than he doesn't, like by a crap ton more. He had great pocket presence throughout, knowing when to hang, knowing when to bail, not known as a scrambler, but had some big runs, was able to lead the team and be that fiery guy when it was needed. Also, being able to take coaching, like when Pete looked at him on the sidelines and put his hand to his chest and kind of made the motion down towards the stomach, like, bring it down, bud. And Geno immediately respond and do the same thing with the team. This isn't a young kid who's going to be overwhelmed by this opportunity. And again, if I'm wrong on all this, I'll come on and I will openly admit it and be just as fine for it.
We've got a review in. We haven't done an Apple Podcast review in a while. And I think we did have a negative one up in Canada. And I can't remember if it was the last one either I remember reading or thinking about putting in the show. But it's been a while. So So Dan says, I've been with y'all as a freeloading flocker since year 2 of the pod. You guys have great chemistry and great Hawkra, and I love all the new content the past few years. Keep up the great work. From Dan.
Hey, appreciate it, man. We're doing what we can for everybody. Like, trying to crank this up and give you a little more entertainment out there, because even though there's been a lot of new dudes pop up in this space, it's still kind of an underserved area, covering the Seahawks. So happy to be there for you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
And Dan is way past the freeloader grace period if you've been around since year 2. Like, I would expect a review like 8 years ago after after you've gotten past your 2-year grace period. And you don't necessarily have to donate, but to leave a review as recognizing that you've hit your freeloader grace period and now you've made some sort of contribution, and this way in a review. But, better late than never, Dan.
Absolutely. And, the other thing that Danny Dan can do then, if you feel like it has gone way past the grace period, Brandon, then, he can just convince somebody else to either leave a review or subscribe or, all that stuff. So just, pass it along, man.
Any way that you want to provide value, whether it's in terms of a review, whether it's in terms of liking or subscribing to the YouTube feed, or going to getintheflock.com. Then you get a little bit of value back too. At $3 a month and above, you get into our Discord group, and even higher, you can get into our Facebook group, or just whatever value you feel you get from the show and you want to make a donation in that amount. It's all up to you.
Absolutely, man. And it's very much appreciated. Thanks for the kind words, man.
What do you say we get into some do better and better at life?
All right, man. My do better this week is for field goals. Again, not one that I spend a lot of time on, not a place I tend to peruse on the regular, but I did see this story this week that popped up, and I get it. It's the time of year where we're all struggling to find things to talk about and things like that. But the title of this article, I couldn't get over this one. Seahawks superlatives, biggest regret, Rashad Penny. And it was, this was written by Tyler.
Oh,
Alson. I don't know if it's the same Tyler.
I don't think it's the same Tyler.
I hope not, because
I feel like Tyler would actually reach out
twice.
to. No, this is comment Tyler, not writer Tyler.
Okay. All right. But anyways, he just gets into the idea that, letting Rashad Penny go and him being on the Eagles and everything like that could prove to be one of the biggest regrets this year. And I just couldn't disagree more. Number one, there's no way in hell Rashad Penny stays healthy for an entire season for the Eagles, especially with the way that they run the ball. Now, I think he's going to look good for a while, pretty early, because they do have a run-centric offense, and he's going to be utilized. And they have a decent offensive line. Decent. That's probably underselling it. They've got a good offensive line.
They've got a good one.
And all of that. And that's fine. Rashad Penny can have all this success in the world over there, and I still won't have that as one of my biggest regrets of the offseason. You know why? Because I've got K9, baby. I'm going to be watching Kenneth Walker tear it up all year, and Zach Charbonnet come in and give him a blow and look like a second-round draft pick and a hell of a running back. I'm not going to think twice about having Rashad Penny on this team throughout the year, especially by about week 12 when he doesn't play for the rest of the year. So as far as having regrets about not re-signing Rashad Penny after this last season, Tyler Alson, I think it's Alson.
Alson.
Yeah. Do better.
There you go, Tyler. I like Tyler. I'm kind of in the spot with you in terms of biggest regret. That's definitely a tough step to take. Also, you're going to have to retire the phrase "give him a blow." It hits people wrong for some reason.
Oh, have we heard things to this? Like, have people
in the Discord? Yeah, Amy took that the wrong way.
Look, it's not my fault that Amy's got her head in a bad place. Come on now. All right, that's fine. I can work on that. I can work on me, and especially if it's for Amy, I can do that.
It might be for Amy, but biggest regret of the off season. I mean, it could be not going after interior trenches as much. In terms of Rashad Penny having even a decent season in Philly, I don't know if I see it necessarily because DeAndre Swift is coming over from Detroit. I mean, he might not even make the roster. They have Kenneth Gainwell, who's a young running back who could get a lot of work. It's just he could find himself pretty low on the depth chart, especially if he has any kind of injury issue in the preseason that doesn't allow him to show off some of the highlights that we've seen in the past years. Yeah. But I do like the idea of giving Penny a little bit of credit in terms of his talent, because he definitely had the talent for the position. He just didn't have the health component that allowed him to stay on the field and show off the way that we hoped.
And I love the kid too. I will miss him as a human on the team. Like, easy to root for. You know, just a humble guy doing his thing, and his body just betrays him. Like, it is what it is.
I wouldn't have do better Tyler for that though. That's just
no.
Oh,
well, that's because I'm the one who pisses people off. Like,
and now I'm not going to be able to get Tyler on the show. So,
oh, come on. If Tyler takes that much offense to that, I give me a break. I even prefaced it with the caveat of, like, I know we're all just trying to find things to put out there, you know?
Yeah. Well,
and also too, in that same breath, I had to find a do better for this show. So.
And it's the off season. Okay. Now we're into excuse making season for Adam.
No. Just,
I get it.
Just making sure that Tyler understood that I understand that we're both in the same boat.
Well, my do better this week is for Bobby Wagner. Now, if this ruins us the opportunity of having Bobby Wagner on the show, I'm going to take this shot anyway, because let's go back to December 4th, 2022. The Seahawks playing the Rams for the first time last season. Geno Smith, he dumps it off into the flat to Tony Jones Jr., who some people may not remember, but it was one of the few plays that Tony Jones was involved with. He catches it. Bobby Wagner makes the hit, and as Jones goes to the ground with possession of the football and his knee touching the ground, Bobby Wagner rolls over the top of him and rips the football away. Is this play ringing a bell to you, Adam, at all from last year?
Mm-hmm. Yep. The non-interception?
The non-interception, yes. Bobby Wagner still, now that he's back with the Seahawks on the team, he still is contending that it was a legit interception. He's like, oh, well, the officials called it an interception, and I called it an interception. Bobby, now that you're back with the team, the least that you could do is come clean that you got away with one there. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you absolutely got over because you owned it as your interception, that it was your ball, and you just happened to convince the official at the right time that, you know, maybe there was a shadow of a doubt and they had to go with the call on the field. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but Bobby, you're one of us now. You're back with the team. Give us a little bit of a break. Gino's your guy. Do better.
I kind of respect it. Like, just kind of doubling down and just being like, nope. I
respect the fact that there was a little bit of a twinkle in his eye when he said it.
You think? Yeah, I think he enjoyed that little jab there. That's for sure. But you're not wrong, man. Like, now's the time you stick it right back in the Rams and be like, yeah, we were cheating just like we always did over there.
Exactly. Just how he's like called their uniform colors terrible and or, you know, in a subtext type of way. Yeah.
Yes.
I appreciated that part of Bobby.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, pour one out because we'll never have Bobby Wagner on the show now, and this is the reason. Not any other one.
Well, there you go, Tyler. You're in good company with Bobby Wagner now.
There you go.
If you choose not to come on the show.
I think Tyler's going to want to come on the show. And eventually Bobby too.
On to Better at Life.
All right, man. My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is for a fellow named Tristan Harris. If you have not heard the name before, he was one of the big contributors and lead cogs to making the documentary The Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And is steeped very heavily in, you know, the technology fields and all that stuff.
Did you just now watch The Social Dilemma?
No, I've still never watched it, but I didn't need to. I knew social media is terrible for your deal. Like, I don't know.
Here's for anybody who says like you should go watch that. It's very much it's over the top. Don't watch it.
It's over the top.
It's like it almost makes it seem like it takes a lot of the personal ownership around. Like you should know social media is bad, as opposed to social media is manipulating and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I would say I'd fall somewhere in between those two places because I think there is some active manipulation that happens there in whether intentional or unintentional. And the thing is that however you feel about that, that part of the internet is about to get a lot worse. Tristan Harris just came out with another YouTube video called The AI Dilemma. And if you have not watched it, do it now, because there are things that have changed in this field in just the last 6 months that are absolutely terrifying. And you have some of the big dogs, like a former head of AI at Google, a couple of them actually. I think one at Facebook too. Like, there's been about 4 or 5 of these dudes who are considered like fathers of AI, or, one of the biggest dogs in the race there when it comes to developing AI, seeing the advancements in things like ChatGPT, the last iteration of ChatGPT, and what that means going forward and what this thing is doing and what it's capable of. They really want us to pump the brakes. There was like 35 guys that came out that, Elon was one of them, that signed this open letter to the government being like, we need to put a pause on this stuff, because this is a genie that when it's let out of the bottle, we can't put it back in. And the amount of effect that it's going to have on society with something that's 100 times, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times smarter than the smartest dude on the planet, we could be effing screwed. So for Tristan Harris, I'm not even going to try to explain all of the things that this thing is capable of, but the biggest thing that you need to take away is a phrase that they call emergent technologies or emergent abilities. And basically that's when the AI just teaches itself how to do some shit that it wasn't programmed to do.
Sure.
So for example, the big thing that and look, here I was just trying to explain this to you guys, and the whole internet crashes here because the AI knows that I'm talking about it. Basically,
shut this guy down.
Yeah. These large language models, like, one of the things that they can do is learn how to do stuff, right? And one of them is basically thinking about what the person you're talking to, like thinking about what they might be thinking.
Yeah.
And then using that knowledge to respond to them in a way to either manipulate them or get what you want or give them what they want, right? That's something that, computers generally haven't been able to do. Well, it went from not being able to do that at all to having the ability of a 2-year-old to do that. Like 15 months later, have the ability of a 4-year-old to do that. And within 11 months after that, the ability of a 9-year-old to do that. And just as of 2 months ago, now has the ability of an adult to do that. And the scary part is they didn't discover that it had learned all this stuff over the last 2 years until about 2 months ago. It just did that all on its own.
Where is this thing that we're talking about, though? Like, where is it?
ChatGPT is an example of it. That was specifically this one that was able to do that. And do you remember that New York Times reporter that was interviewing an AI and it tried to get him to leave his wife and like run away with the AI? Oh yeah. This was when it was at about a 2-year-old level, responding to this person the way that they thought that it would want them to. But the point being is that they're getting more sophisticated and with more power and the ability to do things that we're not giving them. They're just figuring it out on their own. And it's not like a rocket that can build more rockets, right? Like that kind of technology. This thing can build more of itself and each time build itself better. And it's scary stuff, man. And we need to get a handle on it sooner rather than later. Get some analog catfish in your life, people, because you might need it here sooner rather than later.
There we go. So, it all comes back to doomsday prepping.
Yeah. So Tristan Harris, better at life than Skip Bayless. Watch it, man. Watch it.
Okay.
And tell me you're not a little spooked.
Look, I was spooked 20 years ago when we got Skynet and then Minority Report. And so
you want to hear the worst thing? You know what China's calling their like big AI development program?
No.
Skynet.
That's a good name for it, because then you're at least you're aware of the potential of it being disastrous.
I guess. And that one former head of Google is now in Canada, kind of one of the fathers of AI. Like, he's the one walking around being like, dudes, this thing could cause an extinction level event very easily if we're not careful. Like, be careful.
it also isn't good enough to, I don't know, put 5 fingers on a human person when you ask it to make some art or to draw a straight line to where
there's so much further along than that. Like that, and it's all happened here just in the last 6-7 months.
Oh, well, there was the story of one of the, what was it? I want to say it was some kind of helpline that people would call into or text into that they thought they could replace the staff with AI. And it ended up going really, really badly. I don't know the entire story of it, but
I'll give you another example. And so this isn't just like the robots taking over and wiping us out.
I want to see some good examples. Like where is it really
succeeded? This is just
succeeded?
another one to think about. Like, okay, let's say it doesn't like wipe us out. Like, how else is this going to change our lives in the next year? Because it's going to affect each and every one of us.
Like you're telling me you can't.
Okay, so here's one. Now some of these AI programs and stuff, you can call somebody up, get 3 seconds of their voice.
Sure.
And then it can do a complete replica of that. So you talking.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like you ish.
Like not ish. Like almost dead ringer type crap, dude. Like it's so good. And the example they give is some bad dude calls up your kid and is looking for something or other. Kid's like, oh man, sorry, you got the wrong number. Now he's got your kid's voice. Then he calls you up with the AI now talking as your kid. Hey, Dad, I'm at school trying to figure out how to fill this form. I need my social security number.
Yeah.
Like, and then here's the thing. They postulated that somebody might do this, didn't put it out or anything. Within a month, somebody was already doing it.
Okay. I'm just saying, let's show me some of the good examples before I'm on board that it's actually working.
Okay.
As well as it should.
Okay. Yeah. Let's make sure we see something good.
Look, there's still people that fall for the Nigerian Prince email. So, and that wasn't advanced AI.
No, but imagine if you have that capability on top of it. And what that means going forward for just our discourse and news media and the fakes and all that stuff. This is going to be bad news, man. I'm telling you. Everything about this feels bad. The opposite of Gino having a great season.
Feels like an opportunity for us to get better educated, to get ahead of the
super intelligence. You bet. We'll do that right away.
I don't know how super it's going to be, but
okay. Watch it.
I mean, maybe it can fix Wikipedia then, if it's that great.
Well, I mean, it's not a god.
My better at life this week is for a god amongst football writers, Gilberto Manzano. And maybe he used AI to come up with this. And, it would actually, I would like to hear from AI who the 5 first-round NFL draft picks most likely to be a bust in the NFC. I'd like to hear what AI has to think, but I'm going to go with what Gilberto has to say because number 1 on his list, Paris Johnson, offensive tackle for the Cardinals at number 6. And nothing excites me more than to see a division rival at the top of the list in terms of draft busts. It's probably likely just based off of the track record of how terrible the Cardinals have been in terms of their general managing, decision-making, ownership decision-making. So yes, it wasn't necessarily a surprise to see Paris Johnson at the top of this list, but nothing would make me happier. And so I was very happy to see Gilberto peg the Cardinals with the biggest draft bust in the NFC this year. So he is better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, maybe we need to cheerlead list season a bit more when they throttle our rivals and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I will have to say, I wholeheartedly disagree. I like Paris Johnson. I think he's going to be good. It's hard to put all of the previous failures of the Cardinals organization right on the shoulders of new GM Austin Fort or whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to see what he does first, before I'm like, that guy's a moron.
No, but I like I like where the headspace is at here, thinking that of the likely busts that the Cardinals would have one. And
Cards. Yeah.
It's the Cards. It's also a position where there's a lot of high expectations come along with that position at being a top pick. And so even if you're okay, it can be viewed as a bust because you're not coming in and shutting down everybody. And with some of the edge talent that's in the NFC West, it could be a tough spot for a rookie.
Sure. Sure. I mean, Charles Cross wasn't perfect last year, but he was damn good.
Yeah.
You know, I think Paris Johnson could get there.
I don't want him to be, though. I mean,
No.
I wish him success in life once he changes teams and is off the Cardinals organization.
Absolutely. But until then, failure. And failure for the stupid Niners, failure for the Rams, failure for all of the Four-Racka. Screw all of those guys forever and ever.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left.